A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are tuning in today from. Hello, my name is Nishit Kotak. I am here with the team from Hindu Academy. And if you are new to the broadcast, then welcome. I'll just share quickly how this broadcast runs. We meet every Tuesday at 2 o'clock UK time. It runs for about 50 to 55 minutes wherever possible. And the format is largely like this. We start with a focus topic. Today's topic is going to be on morality. Is it really clear cut as it seems to be? Or is there more to it than appears on the surface? And then after we've had a discussion around this focus topic, we will then open up to general question and answer. So how can you take part? You can be on youtube.com/Hindu Academy, or you could be on facebook.com/Hindu Academy. Please do jump onto the comments section on either of the platforms and leave us your thoughts, your comments, and your questions on anything to do with Hinduism. And I will pick them up and pass them on to the rest of the team, and we will try and answer your questions live on air where possible. So without any further delay, let me just share with you the focus topic for today. We've got a video ready for you. And after the video, we will come back for a Q&A around this focus topic.
And there are moral issues that we also talked about, where you see the strengths and the weakness. Be always aware. Whenever we deal with, say, moral issues, this is a gray area, not a black and white area. Let me give an example. Last week, I spent 4 hours in the headquarters of RSPCA. You know, RSPCA looking after animals, welfare of animals, doing a marvelous job. And they were asking me, so you can see how difficult most of these moral issues are gray area. There is no black and white answer. Let me give you an example, what we were discussing. They said, suppose we find one animal that is very ill. We see from his eyes he's very ill. He can't stand up even. And you see he's really covered in sores and he's struggling. He's looking at me in a sad way, saying, I'm in tremendous pain. What does your religion say? What should we do? Suppose we inject him, doesn't help him. We can see he's still struggling. You can't inject him with any chemicals or any drugs to make it better. We tried, doesn't work, and still suffering. Could have horrible illness. What should we do? Should we just watch him suffer and say, yes, let him suffer? Does Hinduism say that? What should you do? Otherwise, what we'll say is we've got this injection, we can put it in, and the cow will be sent, or that animal will be sent to sleep without any pain. It will be painless. It will be sent off. So you won't see the suffering in front of us. What is your Hindu view? And you may think Hindu view must be, oh yes, the animal must suffer. He's paying a price for his bad karma in the past life. What karma? The poor little cow, what bad karma did he do? He was eating grass. And he used to suffer just because he let it suffer. I say, we don't teach stuff like that. We would say, be humane. Try and resolve it as well as you can. If you can't nurse that animal back to health, send it off. Again, how can I be sure? Suppose the animal was just on the borderline, it could have perhaps just recovered. How do I know? I don't know. Gray area. See, I told you, no black and white. Gray area. This ability to be mature enough to see gray and not try and term everything as black and white. Because in real life, nothing is black and white. It's always gray area. An ability to see if you like, this difficult decision. And the decisions we take will be very personal ones. Maybe as a community, as a society, or as individuals. We have to take the responsibility of taking very difficult decisions. I give you, so these issues are, suppose, your family members, we wish nobody's family members undergoes this difficult thing. Suppose they had a serious stroke or something, and they are struggling in the hospital. And they are on a breathing equipment and lung equipment and heart equipment. The blood is being pumped into them. Now, are you doing well? Are you doing good or bad for that person? Think. Is there a clear answer? What should you do? Should you continue to pump blood into it? Continue to put his lungs artificially go up and down? Maybe he's suffering. He wants to go. Your family member wants to go. You say, no, stay on the bed and we'll keep pumping blood in you. What kind of life is that? Do you have an answer? Do you have the right on him? Just think for yourself. I don't have answers. It's a gray area. Maybe the person may recover if you keep pumping blood into his system, and maybe he'll come back and say, thank you for looking after me. Or maybe he's suffering, he wants to go away, but he can't tell you that. How do you know? I don't know. The ability to be mature when you are looking at moral issues is something the Hindu religion gives you that right to think for yourself. They don't give you a fixed black and white prescription. Think about all the various issues, come to a decision as a person, as an individual, or as a community, or as a society. They give us this variation.
So there we go. So nothing in life is really so straightforward. There are so many ways of looking at things. And I think Swami Vivekananda also once said that the truth can be stated in 1,000 ways, and each can be correct as well. So morality, is it really as straightforward as we think it is? To discuss this topic, I'd like to invite the rest of my team. We've got Manish Bhai, we have Sitabir, and we've got Vijay Bhai. So Manish Bhai, I hand over to you to carry on with the rest of the Q&A, and I'll go back and manage the chat.
Sorry, Nishit Bhai. Yes, Namaste viewers, thank you for joining us today. Nice to see you today. Very interesting topic, morality for Hindus. And as Jai Bhai said, there is no clear-cut answers. And that is a problem, because then we don't have a kind of guide or guidebook, or just look this up and say, yes, right, wrong, yes, no. Isn't that a problem? Because now we don't have any clear-cut way of proceeding with life, and it just puts us in charge, and many people don't like to think about these things. There are many questions in life. How do we progress with this, Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's very tough. I mean, I think regarding the moral issue, I mean, it's a really huge topic, morality. I mean, there have been people get PhDs and all kinds of stuff. But the thing is this, that, yeah, it's very, very tough. How do you judge? I mean, that's the nature of things. That's the nature of how things unfold, right? There is no clear cut, as Jay Bhai said, black and white. And there can't be, because even if you, even in evolution, the way humans evolve, everybody is different. So how do you judge? I mean, it's not that straightforward. But I think you have to do the best you can with the information you have. Like, I know if you're in hospital, if you know somebody is in a vegetative state, and the doctor clearly mentions that, look, this person has no chance of recovering, his kind of brain cells are gone. I know there have been cases in the UK court where the relatives said, look, no way we allow that. He has to keep on running on the machine for God knows how many years. And the judge says, look, you have no say in this, and the doctors just switch it off. So it's a very, very tough topic by and large. So I think it's to understand it's not easy to judge. I mean, even in law, it's not that straightforward. I mean, there was a case, I remember, I think 5 years ago, where there was one couple, a gay couple, and one of his partners had, I think, AIDS and really suffering tremendous pain. And every day he would hassle his partner saying, please take my life, please take my life. And this person had never taken any life before, So eventually he felt he was so much feeling the pain of his partner so much. He actually put a pillow and then kind of put him out, yes. And when this came to court, and when he was explaining the situation, many, many months I was suffering, even the judge got emotional. He just said, look, by law, you are actually guilty. I can't punish you. I don't know how to punish you, because it's just not possible. Because you did a very noble thing, because your friend was in tremendous suffering for so many months. What do I do? So I think gave him a suspended sentence or something like that. And actually, the murder is a very big crime. So how do you judge? There is no straightforward answer in this kind of topic. But I would say, by and large, you use the advice you have from experts, doctors, or whoever to make a decision. And then I think go with that, because otherwise, if you're not an expert in that field, it's very tricky. But this issue of morality actually expands far more than that, because in Hinduism, what we have is that we have very many books on morality, on law books like Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti. There's so many we have, and they all have these codes, but they keep on changing with the times, and rightly so, because whatever was right ancient times is not true today. So even when society evolves with medicine and other kinds of people understanding changes, so morality is changing all the time. So it can never be fixed. Forget in terms of analysis, even in terms of space and time, what time in the, what time we do decisions, what country make decisions. So it can never be written in black and white. I know there are some religious books which give black and white kind of, prescription, but it's very hard to do that because every situation, it's different. So it's a interesting topic, Sita.
Yeah, I think you've covered it amazingly. It's one of those, very, very difficult topics, very controversial topics. And I think the wonderful thing about Hinduism is that it doesn't say that you must do this or you must do this under certain conditions. It always says you are the spirit, you are empowered to make that decision and let your conscience be your guide, because it's an incredibly personal decision as to what to do regarding, if there's an animal who's suffering, there's a human being who's suffering, what is the right path of action? Because we believe in a number of things. We believe in reincarnation. We believe in the law of karma. So they can help us to guide us on the kind of decisions that we make. Because say, for example, that person or that animal is suffering such a tremendous amount, but as a Hindu, you believe in the idea of reincarnation. It gives you some comfort that maybe it is time to let this person or this animal go and let them take on a fresh body in a new life. Because if you're an atheist and you don't believe that there is anything afterwards, you may be perhaps more tempted to say, I must cling on to this person, I must cling on to this life, because that person or that animal is going to be completely snuffed out if I let them go. But, as a Hindu, if we believe in the idea of reincarnation, we believe in the continuity of our existence beyond the body. And another sort of thing to take into account is this idea of the law of karma. If you sort of prolong the suffering of an animal or a human being, you're perhaps developing bad karma for yourself. You are prolonging the suffering, making that person go through more pain rather than, helping them, which is ahimsa, which is trying to stop their pain. So there are a number of Hindu concepts that we can use to guide us, but ultimately the decision has to lie with us. It's a very, very difficult one, but we have to kind of trust our judgment and trust our conscience to make the right decision.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai. We take next question. There's a question come through. The question is, does a person's motivation matter regarding whether an action is morally good, or does only the action itself matter? For example, James donates money to charity solely to impress his friends. Is James's action morally good? And if so, in what sense? Sita Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very complex issue, because by making that donation, you are helping in some way, even if your intention was not necessarily just to help those people, but your contribution is physically making a difference. So there probably is some good karma to it, but also you have to think about the intention behind it as well. So the intention should, in the most sort of ideal situation be, I really want to help because I want to help, and not because, I can sort of glorify myself on social media or whatever it is. You have to do it for the sake of wanting to help. So maybe you'd get more good karma by doing it with that sort of intention. But as we have discussed many times, the law of karma is incredibly complex. We try and simplify it and make it easy. Like this plus this causes this, but it's never like that. It's so much more vast, more complex than anything, that we can imagine. So try and do whatever good you can, but try and do it in as selfless a way as we can. That's what the Bhagavad Gita tells us to do. But we are human, and, we might have other sort of motivations, other intentions for doing things. Even if that is the case, at least try and do something good with it. Because any good is some kind of good, hopefully, to that person. But yeah, it's a very complex situation with the law of karma. You just you don't know how big or how small your contribution is to the work of that charity or whatever. But whatever you are able to do it with your full heart and with the intention of not wanting to do it for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And that's the ideal scenario that we can all hope for. Vijay?
I think, Sita, you have covered it pretty well. I mean, the thing is this: if somebody wants to give money even to impress a friend, even then, so be it, right? At least somebody will benefit. It doesn't matter. But by and large, I mean, I think it's quite often that you do something with good intent. That's what everybody does. But you cannot know when the action itself is done. It may not have a good intent, because the way as Sita explained is much more complex than just simple, cause and effect. It can quite happen that you do something with good intent, but negative results might happen. But I think sometimes the intent actually is more important. Otherwise, you do nothing. If you worry about what the consequence will be, you might not do any action. You might just become a couch potato, and just live a Thomas life. So always good to do. It's always better to do action with good intent and good kind of have some benefit to whatever work you're doing. It may not happen. That's possible. Hey, but that's so be it. But doesn't mean you should not stop. So I would say even intent has a very big role to play in that sense. But I remember once when I was studying GCSE a long time ago, and Jaybai actually raised this issue. He goes, in the UK they hold all this, what do you call this, private, dance and parties, raise money for people in Africa and stuff like that. And he was just giving an example, saying, what if that dance was in Africa itself, where these people are suffering? Would it really happen? But the question is this. So sometimes I think the idea of selfless action really plays a big part. But you know what? Even if they're doing all this, raising money through charity events or dance, whatever, so be it. At least somebody will benefit. So it may not be the perfect solution, but I would still say, let's do it anyway, because the person who needs the money most will actually get it. Yeah.
Wonderful answer, Vijay Sitaben. So we're getting some very, very good questions already, and please keep them coming. It's so good to see all these lovely questions coming. Wonderful to see. So we take the next question, which is again on morality. The question is, are people innately good, or is moral virtue a learned thing? A very interesting question, because what our action is, or what our thought of morality is it coming naturally to us? Are we innately good, or is it something that we learn? Vijay?
Okay, this is an interesting question, because it depends who you ask. I mean, in the Hindu sense, we are innately good. We are the divine spark, So it is in us, of course. So when somebody is born, he has the divine spark. Of course, society and environment really molds you as well. So if you got a society which is really, violent society, then of course it's going to mold you in that sense. But primarily we're innately good. But if you ask, Richard Dawkins, who's the selfish gene, then he's saying something else, that we are innately good because we benefit from exchange of, in a society. It's ultimately for our benefit. So we're helping others. At some point they might reward us, right? So we're doing it not because we're innately good, because it makes sense in a survival mechanism. But I think Hindus say that by and large we are innately divine. So we should try and cultivate the divinity in us and then work from that angle. But yeah, it's a very, very, so of course you have to learn as well as you move, we have learned to be more moral. But innately, I think human beings have that divine spark, which makes them innately good. Sita?
Yeah, so I completely agree. I mean, we are the spark of the divine, essentially. So, any sort of action we do, which is good, always makes us feel better as well. When you go out there and you help somebody on the street, or you do some kind gesture, you feel so nice afterwards. If you just help an old lady carry her bag or whatever, just a simple thing like that, it makes you feel so nice. So I think it's one of those things that's innately there. But, because we get so swamped by our, body, mind complex, living this very difficult life, going through all sorts of struggles, we may sort of get waylaid, and we may think we need to try and take an easy route out or take a shortcut here and there. And, it's very easy for us to fall into that kind of trap to make our lives easier. But the important thing to remember is always listen to your heart, always listen to your conscience, because that's the spirit sort of speaking out, trying to guide you. And it's always something that's in there. Like, suppose you're a horrible criminal and you're, I don't know, selling drugs or doing something horrible, hopefully at some point in that person's life, they might sort of start feeling that niggling conscience within them saying, you know, this is not right. This is something that's making me feel horrible inside. And then hopefully they will change their ways, because you know, it might take a long time or it might take a short amount of time, but we will all get there at some point, because where else can we go? We are the spirit. Where else can we go? We might take a very crooked way to realizing it, or we may take a very straightforward way to realizing it. But I have faith in humanity that eventually even the most horrible people will realize that they are truly the spirit.
That's wonderful to hear, Sita. Yes, the wonderful explanation. Jaybai mentioned the RSPCA charity, and they do this wonderful work of treating the animals and looking after them. And what we get is we get different kind of charities, and there are charities like Cancer Research, British Heart Foundation, and some people may donate to these charities because they think they're going to benefit it later because of their research or their work they do in medical field. So is it, not selfish to donate to such charities like Cancer Research? Sitawin?
I mean, there may be some kind of selfish motivation, maybe that, one day, hopefully never, that, if you end up having cancer, then the treatments that have been developed in that time would help you. But you hope that, you would have a wider picture, a broader sort of picture, and say, maybe I want to be helped further along down the line, but you may end up helping, someone who's very close to you, your family member or friend as well. So you have to kind of think that it's not just all about you, it's about the wider sort of community, trying to kind of see yourself in others and not have such a narrow vision of who you are. So it's all about expanding yourself and trying our best to make the right decisions with the right intentions. And it's not always easy because, as Vijay said, it's kind of in our genetic sort of, build up makeup to sort of say, I want to do something good for you only because, then it will help me further along down the line. It reminds me of, the chimpanzees, and they sort of pick ticks out of each other's fur just so that they can get that favor returned at some point in the future. In a way, that's what a lot of these evolutionary biologists sort of say. That's the only reason we're good. But it feels a bit depressing to think of it like that. We're much more than just a transactional, relationship with the people around us. It should be, because there is no sort of, give and take. It's all about giving. And through that process of giving, you feel so much wealth of sort of spiritual connection in return. And that's what you hope for, essentially. So when you do it with the right intention, hopefully you will feel that sort of flood of warmth, which comes with doing something good for the sake of doing something good. Vijay Bhai?
So I think not much to add. I mean, that's I agree. I think that's what it, yeah.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben. We take next question. Ian Pridue is asking a really interesting question. It said the English Bible suffers from lack of clear translation from Aramaic or Hebrew, and has led to a misunderstanding of the original text. That has led to slavery, for example, he's saying. Do you think Hinduism suffers in a similar way with so many gurus' interpretation? What would be a solution? Should we come up with some kind of a very big guide of how we should proceed? Because this can lead many gurus and interpretation lead to much confusion. Vijay Bhai?
Okay, this is an interesting question. I think the question is this. I mean, even in ancient times, we have to be very honest that slavery was actually practiced widely in ancient times. And sorry to say this, a lot of religious books of those times also reflect that. You may not like it, but it's true. I mean, even you'd be surprised, even with some ancient Hindu law books, they say that this guy is Swami, is Dasi. So if you work for the sum, you feel that you're kind of indentured labor. It's not new. Yeah. When people are immensely poor, people immensely rich, this has been going on for a very long time. So, I mean, of course, today people say, no, actually, that's not true. They interpret it different ways. But look, we don't know. I mean, this is the issue with religious books. When you have religious books, We do not know the intent sometimes. We weren't there at that time. And when they put this into religious context, sometimes we struggle in the modern age. And that's why we have to be very careful with religious books. Although we revere them, we give them guidance, we have to think for ourselves. The what perhaps was right at that time or what was saying at that time, it may not be true now. So we have to be very careful with the, with the religious text. I mean, Hinduism, we are lucky in the sense that we have two categories. The Shruti, it doesn't fall into moral arguments. It purely sticks to philosophy, of Atman, Brahman, and creation, and Brahman and all this stuff. And we have the other books, Smriti books, which are kind of evolving all the time. So morality can change. But yes, you're right, Manish Bhai. One thing that there are very many gurus, once they get hold of you in such a way, and especially if you're in a communal group, you're bound to follow what everybody else says. And yes, quite a few times people have been misled to really strange and weird things. So you have to be careful, but human mind is so fickle sometimes. If everybody does it, you do it as well. So we have to be very careful. It's not an easy thing to do. There's so many gurus out there who are trying to mold you, who are trying to get things their way through a sneaky kind of, from the back door to get their aims by using human beings. So what I would say is that humans, as Jayabhai says, use your rational faculties. Never give them up. Always think for yourself. Doesn't matter if the whole world goes in one direction. You have to think, actually, that's not right direction. I have to go this opposite direction. You have to do that. But it's not an easy thing to do. So I would say regarding the text, it's true that quite a few of these texts are very cryptic. Sometimes they've said things in the past which actually made sense then. They don't make sense now. So there's no point. Well, I won't say no point, but we have to be very careful how we use those ancient texts in a modern context. If it doesn't make sense, I would say leave it. And don't use that idea, yeah? Sita Ben?
Yeah, I think you've covered it amazingly. Another thing to, I think, also remember is the context in which that prophet or saint is speaking. So I know, for example, Jesus said, you can only come to the Father through me. And he was, speaking to his group of disciples then, his congregation. But he didn't intend it, that's my opinion, he didn't intend for that to apply for the whole rest of humanity, for the whole rest of time. And a lot of sort of, evangelists, they sort of, rub that in our face that, surely that's the only way is through Christ. Look, Christ has said it himself. But you have to also look at the context. That's what we think is that, ultimately he was addressing his group of congregation, not for the whole rest of humanity, for the whole rest of time. So you have to also look at the sort of the context behind these things. So yeah, the context is very important. And also the translation, sometimes things get sort of translated in, perhaps the wrong words are used in certain situations, which can cause misunderstandings or confusions. But I think probably the best sort of solution to it is to not rely on the ancient scriptures or the ancient texts. Look to modern texts, modern teachers, because they're able to express their findings of spirituality in English. We all know and understand English. Why fall back on ancient stuff? Look at the modern stuff where there is much less chance of it being misunderstood because it's in a context that we all understand.
That is wonderful stuff, Sita Ben. So as Vijay said, use rational faculty, and second is use modern spiritual giants, and they have explained these things now hopefully very nicely and clearly. So there you go. It's we've got modern guides, thankfully, and that can be used to our advantage. Wonderful. And as we were talking about slavery and ancient texts, one practice in South India was this Devdasi practice, which was horrendous. A young woman was married off as a wife of God, and then she was taken advantage of practically. And thank God it's now stopped for last 100 years. Such a horrendous thing, and we cannot continue with such practices. But as we see, in ancient time, the women were looked upon differently, and they were treated differently. And in modern times, such things cannot be tolerated. So in that sense, I'm bringing in this Sita Agni Pariksha thing again. How do we look at it in modern texts? And why does it only apply to women? Why can't men be subject to test as well? What is your view on this, Sita-Ben?
Yeah, I mean, times have changed a lot, and I'm so glad that they have, because, you know, for so many hundreds of thousands of years, women have been mistreated, have been sort of given secondary status in society. And yeah, I mean, there was this in terms of the Sita Agni Pariksha. So, you know, there was this thinking that because, you know, Sita went to live with another man, she's not pure anymore. So she needs to sort of prove herself. And although Ram had full 100% trust in her, she's a spiritual being. She's not interested in anything like that. He, for the sake of society, for appeasing society, for keeping, you know, the moral fabric together, because otherwise all the women will think it's okay to go and live with another man, and that's okay. But that's what Sita had to sort of demonstrate her purity through that sort of practice. And again, I mean, because there's a lot of sort of, you know, colorful mythology interwoven into the Ramayana. We don't know how sort of true it was, if she actually did something like that. But that's essentially, that was their purpose. Ram and Sita's purpose in life was to be a moral example, to be a guiding light for the kingdom at a time where there was a great deal of immorality being practiced. So that was their purpose. So anything that they could do towards that purpose, they were prepared to do. So that was incredibly important. And in terms of the changing role of women today, I'm so happy to, you know, see so much progress in terms of the equality being given to womankind. I mean, you know, there is still a long way to go. There is still this discrepancy in the pay between men and women, but at least women were allowed to go out and vote. They're allowed to go out and work. And especially in India, the workforce has doubled because the female population are not stuck in the kitchen and looking after children all day. They can go out into the community, do some real positive work. And it's a real benefit to the whole of society to, you know, not confine women to the kitchen, keep them out there in society because they've got a lot to offer. And women kind of the ones who sort of keep the fabric together, keep all the sort of practices, all the traditions going in the family. Usually when you look at any Hindu family, usually women are the ones who carry on doing the rituals and the prayers and reminding their children of the importance of, you know, a more spiritual way of living. So women have a great role to play, and I'm so glad that things are changing now. Vijay Pai?
Yeah, I think, as Sita mentioned earlier, the time and context is very important in this case because this Agni Pariksha happened in a particular time and context. And that was a different tradition back then. And I mean, if you read some of the ancient scriptures, you see the wives calling the husband Swami. You don't see any kind of rattle the other way around. I think we have to be realistic and accept that by and large, the world was run on a patriarchal society. That's a fact, yeah. If we accept those facts, then things change. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, no, women had equal rights, you know, in ancient time, women have special rights. It's not true, let's face it. It wasn't the case. I mean, of course, in Hinduism, we are lucky that we have women raised to status of goddesses. So we have this idea that women can also be seen as gods. But in practice, let's face it, it's been a struggle, right? It's not been that, but now it's much, much better. I mean, that's one thing I always admire about Ramakrishna Paramahans. He actually had the courage to put his wife on a pedestal and actually worship her, you know, with arti. No, that's the kind of one first time you see somebody in a modern context actually worshiping his own, you know, partner as a goddess, a living goddess. And I think that's actually amazing. That's one way of really elevate women is to do that. If you ask me to do that, it's not easy to do that, you know, if anybody else. But it just shows that in society, you know, we have to work towards giving women equal rights. I mean, not only that, if you look at all the stats, you see that wherever women are participating in society are by and large prosperous societies around the world over. It's not rocket science to see that the West has progressed a lot in the last 50, 80, 100 years. It's because women take a major role in society and economy. That's why they're really ahead. I remember if you look in the UK, if you look at some ads in the 40s, 50s on TV, when the TV came out, they're showing women being taught how to iron and how to, you know, to work in the house. And those kind of videos come out, how to be an ideal housewife. But after World War II, when women had to go out, they had no choice. They had to go to make bullets in the factory, make machines, make trucks. And then, oh, hold on a minute. Actually, they can do a lot of good things in society. And ironically, World War II was a major driver to get women into the workforce. And now we can see the benefits because society is progressed a lot and much more prosperous. So, I mean, is there, I mean, as I say, any society where women participate equally, it's for a benefit of the society. So that's all I can add to that, Manish.
Wonderful answer, Sitaben, Vijay. We take the next question. We get some very good questions from viewers, so we'll take one of them. Someone's asking, when should we forgive a wrongdoing? Under what circumstances? Vijay.
That's a very tough one. Look, ultimately, if something wrong happens to you, by and large, I think in a society, a stable society, there has to be some form of justice. That's why we have a court system. In any democracy, you have three pillars. You have the police, which enforce the law. If the law is broken, you have the judiciary, which actually punishes you, and then you have the legislature, which makes the laws. The three pillars. So by and large, for society to function properly, you need some sort of society rules to follow. But if some wrongdoing is done to you, something wrong to you, ultimately forgiveness will help you as well. But I accept some things are very hard to forgive, yes. But by and large, if you find it hard to forgive, at some point, it benefit you as well. Maybe not the other person, it will benefit you far more because the anger and hate you have in you will kind of go away. But it's not that state. I think humanity has a long time to evolve to that state yet. But that's my view on that. Yeah, Sita?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's much easier to, say than to do. I mean, obviously for your own peace of mind and, just to kind of move on with your life, it may be good to forgive, but we can understand that in some circumstances that may be quite difficult to do. But I think ultimately when you're looking at these kind of situations, you have to look at the bigger picture as much as you can. It's much easier said than done to say, well, this is life. This is how the cookie crumbles. Life, it can sometimes not be very fair. Just look at the bigger picture, look at the things that make you happy, because by sort of letting it sort of fester in your mind, you're not doing yourself any favors either. So try and move on, focus on the things that make you happy, that uplift you spiritually, and focus on the more sort of spiritual aspects of your life in the best way that you can. It's much easier said than done, but for your own peace of mind as well, that's probably a more positive way of dealing with it.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai. So, Vijay Bhai mentioned police, and the problem is who is going to police the police? What happens when they do wrong? We've just had a case where a secret agent misused his power to, I think, spy on his partner and give her a hard time. And we've had some police officers taking advantage of their situations and doing horrendous things. And that happens in India as well. So question is, how do we police the police? I mean, where do we stop? And what can we do in this situation, Sita?
It's really, really difficult to know. I mean, there's sort of corruption which happens everywhere around the world at some kind of level. And it kind of, makes you lose faith in humanity sometimes, that, how can you trust anybody? How can you do anything? There's just, it makes you think that what's the point of doing anything good if it's all just going to get trampled on anyway? But we just have to try to have faith as much as we can. I mean, sometimes you do lose faith in humanity, the way that some people are treated, the way that some people misuse their power. Look at all the sort of politicians around the world, siphoning off money and doing all sorts of corrupt things. It makes you really lose faith in humanity. And the only thing that we can do in our own small, limited way is try and live in the best, most ethical, moral way that we can, and hope that, it can make some kind of a difference. And I think that's probably much easier in a country like the UK, where, there are relatively more sort of transparent systems of ways of doing things, as opposed to other countries where there is a lot more corruption. Because I hear stories of people who, move to these kind of corrupt countries to set up a business, and then they end up having to fall into the trap themselves of having to do under the table deals to get their stuff done, and it makes you corrupt. So it makes you think, just try and avoid those kind of situations. Try and live in a country which allows for a more sort of, more regulation. There's more sort of control and more, everything is done in the right way. It's much easier said than done, but it's a very complex issue. Vijay Bhai?
It's not that straightforward. I think in the UK, there's something called the police ombudsman whom you can complain to if you don't like, if police does something wrong. But the question is, who will now police the ombudsman itself? You can go, in the continuous iteration. So, but by and large, I think education has to make a difference. So from a very young age, I think we have to really teach our children about the perils of all this, corruption, law breaking. I know in India, there are some people, as Sita mentioned, if you're a good person, they say, look at this goody. Because everybody's so corrupt. If you go out of line, they feel that you're an embarrassment to them because they, So what do you do in these situations? So I think the whole society needs to change for this kind of, society has to change totally. And I think it starts from education. Because I mean, if you look at some of the countries like in Scandinavia, where people from very young age are taught the value of, humanity and to live a life of honesty and decency, then I guess it makes a big difference. But yeah, it's a big challenge in many countries about. I mean, nowadays we have technology, obviously, to try and create transparency. But people who are corrupt, they always find different ways to find some way to make money. It reminds me of a story, interesting about Akbar and Birbal. There's one corrupt official who was always taking money of the tax collector. So then I think Akbar said, look, he's corrupt because the job makes him corrupt. And Birbal goes, no, he's corrupt because he's innately corrupt person. So they had a challenge, and then what Akbar said, okay, I'll give him a job, but he can't really make money. So they put him on the shore of the of the sea and said, okay, your job is to count ships, right, and do nothing else, and count whatever how big the ships are. So he was on the beach and sitting. So both of them went in disguise to that person, and he was calling out. She was shouting, "Oi, how dare you go through here? Do you know you have to pay taxes to go through here? And I have to charge you taxes to go through here. Otherwise, I'll get really angry." And they said, "Okay, but you know what? I'll let you go for a small fee, right?" And Akbar was seeing this, and then I think Akbar had to agree that it's because people are innately corrupt. They'll somehow get the way to make money, no matter what job they do, right? So I think we have to change the innate behavior of persons to make them less corrupt. So I think that's where India, I mean, I'm sorry to say, for 70 years, India has not done a good job in changing that behavior. And personally, I think that it's because the roots of dharma, the beautiful dharmic roots we have, Hinduism, doing your duty, the idea of holding society together, all these have been forgotten. And these ideas need to come back in a big manner, I think, in India. Yeah, Manish bhai.
Very good answer there, Vijay Bhai, Sita Ben. So we've seen the corruption, and Vijay Bhai mentioned dharma. And we see, many people, I think there was somebody did a list of how many countries there are most religious people in the world, and the Indians come up in kind of very high number, very top. So the question is, can religious, dharmic people be corrupt? And if they are really dharmic, can you have what? Vijay Bhai.
So the thing is, I think personally, I think dharma helps, but it depends how you follow dharma. But I think also society structure, dharma is not just following your own dharma, right? Dharma is upholding society. So you have to create the environment in such a way that the society is upheld in an orderly fashion, like dharma also means order, right? So the idea is this begins at a very young age when you teach children. In all of there's of course, they had a Gurukul system, but that ideas have to come back profoundly again. The idea of citizenship. I think, when my children are learning in school, they have little half GCSE module is called citizenship and something and ethics. And it's fantastic. I'm so glad the school is teaching this kind of topics. Yeah. So I think by and large, you can be dharmic. You don't have to be dharmic. You can also, by dharmic, I don't mean religious. If you follow the idea of, your duty of working in society together, the dharma is not really 100% like you have to believe in a God as such, but principles of holding society together. If you follow that, then I think it doesn't matter whether you believe in a God or not believe in a God. you still have a good society. That's my personal view of this. Sita?
Yeah, I think you've covered it amazingly. I think, you do get a lot of people sort of pretending to be dharmic and all of that, and then they end up, practicing corrupt things and doing corrupt things. And unfortunately, you get a lot of those kind of people around in the world. And you just have to sort of trust your conscience and say, is this person really genuine? Are they really doing, work for the greater good, or is it for their own good? So you have to use your own judgment call, because there's nobody out there who can sort of, whitewash and say this person's good, this person's bad. You have to use your own sort of judgment and your own sort of conscience to decide the kind of person, the spiritual guides that you're using. And another sort of way of testing somebody to see are they really genuine is to sort of look at them, look at their life when there's nobody watching, see how they are behaving behind the scenes, because that gives you a better indication as to what kind of a person are they really practicing what they preach. So that's hopefully some kind of guidance that we can use to sort of see, is somebody genuinely spiritual or are they corrupt behind the scenes? And another thing to look for is a genuinely spiritual person would not want to, ask anything from you in return. It's not a business. They're doing it for the welfare of humanity. So any kind of request for money or, a bribe or whatever, that's automatically a big red flag. So hopefully that gives some kind of an indication as to who is genuinely spiritual and dharmic and who isn't.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben, Vijay. So we got a couple of questions from Anjali Pandey. She's asking how the lines fade in between morality and responsibility in context of present situation of world. And also ask, what does it mean to be morally right or morally wrong? So the first question was how the lines fade in between morality and responsibility in context of present situation in world. Second, what does it mean to be morally right or wrong? Sita Ben?
Yeah, it's quite tricky in that sense to answer that question. I guess, in terms of the world, like the world is a huge place. So you have to sort of operate in whatever sort of limited way that you can. And you have to sort of make sure that probably the best sort of litmus test for doing something sort of ethically and morally correct and also very spiritual way of living is to always put the needs of others before your own. So any sort of decision that you take, which is for the interest of other people over your own, is probably some kind of an indication that you are doing something right. And usually you find that when you do put others before yourself, you do feel really good afterwards. You feel happy and content that you've done something positive, in whatever small sort of limited way, you have done something to make a difference. And, sorry, what was the other part of the question? Sorry, Manish.
What does it mean to be morally right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a similar sort of answer I can give to that is, the way you can be morally right is because if you focus on the people outside rather than your own personal gain, that's being sort of morally right. And whenever you're sort of stuck in making a decision about what you should do, should you put your needs first or the needs of others? Probably if you put the needs of others first. And sometimes you might find that makes things very difficult or awkward for you. But in the long run, if you just get a smile from a child's face or something, it makes everything seem worthwhile. So we are all sort of small human beings living on this massive planet. In whatever small way we can, just look for the interests of the wider community, really. And that's essentially what spirituality is all about. Vijay Bhai?
Yeah, it's quite interesting questions. I think the first one regarding the line fading between moral responsibility, by and large, I think I use the same kind of guide for me, which Swami Vivekananda very famously said, only those who live for others are truly alive. The rest are kind of walking dead, basically. Because if you only look for yourself, I mean, even if you go, it makes no difference whether you exist or not, because nobody will notice you. You might as well be dead if you don't really contribute to society. So I think that's a very good kind of indicator. Regarding responsibility, of course, we all have responsibility to live a moral life and look after others. And that is also interlinked as well. But the second question regarding morally right and morally wrong, it's not easy because it depends on society you live in, the context, because it can be very subjective sometimes. I mean, it's a classic case. Like, if you go to some countries, polygamy is morally right. In some countries, not right. In some countries, single mothers is okay. In some countries, not okay. So it depends on what society you live in and how people see things. So as Sita says, sometimes we are limited by the place we live in, but we should try and make the best we can from society, in the kind of context we live in, and live the best moral life we can, I guess. So it's not that straightforward to answer that, Manish.
Okay, same person has asked this question. Kindly differentiate between Hinduism and Sanatan. Both often use, or people often use both synonymously. Vijay bhai, over to you.
I think this is something called quite a while. I mean, of course, the true name, if you ask somebody, will be Sanatan Dharma. But by and large, because of historical reasons and because of course, India has been, a lot of people have come to India conquering, whatever. The word Hinduism has stuck, which is basically a mistranslation of the reverse Hindu, and it's stuck. I mean, it's in a way very unusual situation, because by and large in India, people never distinguished between religions. Everything was Sanatan Dharma. But in the Abrahamic world, or at least there had been an idea that I am this religion, you are this. There's always been division that if I'm a Jewish, you're not. If I'm Christian, you're not. India never had that idea. But by and large, I think the world we live in, they need to differentiate, because Sanatana Dharma is universal, right? It doesn't compartmentalize or Hindus or Christians. By and large, it covers whole of humanity. But unfortunately, we live in a world where people like to differentiate that, I am this, but you must something else. So the word Hinduism has come in. But I think if you talk in English all the time, you're bound to say Hindu, right? Whereas if I maybe Sanskrit might say Sanatani or whatever, yeah. So I think both, I would say both are okay in the context you use them. There's some people who are very firm and very kind of orthodox. No, Hinduism should never be used because it's not the scriptures. But I would say be comfortable in the context you use in. Sita?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those sort of, it's like a nickname, basically. Hinduism is like a nickname. Some people are okay with it. Some people are not okay with it. It's totally up to you, whatever you feel is best. But that's not the important question. The important question is the deep philosophical heart of Hinduism, or Sanatana Dharma, or whatever you want to call it, is that essentially everything is spirit. Every aspect of our life should be dedicated to focusing on the spirit in others, those around us. And that is essentially how we can sort of live a positive, ethical life, to look after the interests of others. So our name shouldn't really matter so much. It's more how we sort of live our life, the practice that we have, that we get, the guidance that we get from the heart of Hindu philosophy.
Wonderful. We take the next question from Ian Pradue. We're coming up to close. There's 7 minutes to go, so we'll try to speed up. Ian Pradue was asking an interesting question. In medical treatments medical treatments have been developed following the experimentation and suffering of animals, is it moral to use the medical benefits? Are there karmic consequences? And in this, I can add a few things. During World War II, Nazis actually experimented on Jewish people in the Holocaust. They were experimenting on actual live human beings, and that has benefited medical field tremendously, the research they did. But should we be using that sort of research now and reap the benefit of it? Sitaben.
Oh, that's a really, really awful sort of situation to really look at, really. The fact that anyone is prepared to experiment on another human being is absolutely horrendous. And when you look at the amount of experimentation which has been done on animals as well, it's incredibly cruel and awful. But you have to sort of also look at the context, because if that experimentation is being done purely for the cosmetic industry or for, frivolous things, then of course it's awful and it should not be condoned. And any kind of ethical practice which can take its place, which does not involve the harming of life, should be taken. That's why these days you get so many vegan products, which is wonderful. But having said that, sometimes, especially with medical issues, you have to sort of do animal experimentation on, and suppose it's in order to save human life. That's where the lines get much more blurry, because it makes you think, you know, if I can save the life of my grandmother or over the life of, you know, another animal, what's more important? So it's one of those very, very difficult sort of situations that, you know, life puts us in. And again, it's one of those things that you should do what, you know, your conscience tells you is the right thing to do. If you're prepared to kind of make that sort of choice that I will use, you know, certain medicines which have been used on animal, you know, experimentation, but it can save my grandmother's life, maybe you will go for it. You may choose not to go for it. It depends on your stance. It makes it incredibly blurry when it comes to saving the life of a human over saving the life of an animal. So yeah, again, it's one of those things that the Hinduism can't offer a clear injunction. And in a way, it's probably good that it doesn't, because a lot of good things or bad things can happen as a result of that. So the decision has to be left with you as an individual, and you have to make that decision for yourself. Vijay Pai?
It's a tough question. I mean, as Sita mentioned, like I know there was recently just an article in the papers where one person got a pig's heart, a genetically altered pig and his heart, and for 1 month it actually worked. So of course they've been doing. I mean, now think about this. Say you have in that situation, you're told, by the way, your heart is going to fail now, but I'm going to give you a genetically altered heart, which is going to let you live for the next 10 years, and you got 3 little kids in the house. What do? I mean, you can't say, oh, you know, I'm going to be, you know, perfect. I wouldn't accept that because animal experiment. You're going to be stuck in a very awkward situation. I mean, same with malaria. Malaria is currently killing, I think, 2 or 3 million children a year. And I know that malaria doesn't affect a lot of animals. So they've been experimenting with animals as to why they can fight malaria and we can't. Animals are being used. So what do you do there? You say, no, they can't use it and let children die every year. And the mothers who can't afford or struggling for nets, what do they do? So it's not that straightforward. But one thing I can say that there's a good hope on the horizon, because I get these IIT magazines at home from my, you know, my chartered institute, and by and large they have done so much progress in terms of a computational analysis. You know, they can do a lot of, they can draw out genes, they can work out how genes will propagate, how they might mutate by using powerful computers. So they can do so much research now without the use of animals, purely using maths and, you know, software and so many different ways you can now do, because you have a lot of already base data from all the experience of animals done so far. And they're now using much more other techniques. So I'm hoping that in the future we'll reach a stage where we really don't have to experiment animals, because the entire animal DNA is there. You can work out so many different ways to work out in a kind of a different way to find that. Let's hope we reach a stage. But I think at the moment it's not easy to say, to tell somebody when children are dying in the thousands, it's, oh, I'm sorry, you can't use a mouse to test something because the mouse is going to, it's not that clear cut. So I would say let's leave the answer as gray at the moment on this point. Manish, yeah.
Very, very interesting topic that. And the follow-up question is one person's life more important than the others? That has been a question that was asked before. Sorry, viewers, we cannot take any more questions today, but this is the last one. Vijay Bhai.
Look, all life is sacred, regardless what you do. I know sometimes the law might take somebody's life because it's committed murder or whatever, but by and large, we should be very careful not to say, oh, somebody's life is more than others. Like I know when this question is, my daughter is a psychologist, she asks me this kind of question all the time. So once she asked me, I've got a doctor here and a laborer, whom will you value? And I said, doctor, and he goes, by the way, tomorrow is going to kill somebody. I said, no, it's possible, right? He might do that, he might kill his wife. So who do you judge? You know, even this doesn't matter how much they benefit society. You may let them leave, but eventually they might commit some other crime. So by and large, it's not that easy to judge. So I think we should say that all life is sacred. By and large, all life is valuable. But I would say let the law decide if a crime has been done, how to punish someone. That's all I can add to this point. Sita?
Yeah, there's not much more I could really add to that. There's no way that you can decide whether one human life is more valuable or less valuable than another. And it's wrong to even suggest anything like that, because we are all essentially the same human race. We are all the same spirit. And, you know, you get, you know, people who do good things, bad things, but ultimately that value of that life is the same as everybody else's. And we have to do whatever we can to preserve and protect the life that's on planet Earth, whatever life it is, human or animal or any living thing.
Fabulous. So what a wonderful session we've had so far. Manish Bhai, thank you so much for steering that. Vijay Bhai, Sita Ben, thank you so much for answering the questions. We did have some really interesting questions to cover today. And as you can see, folks, this issue is not so clear-cut as it may seem to be. There are lots of gray areas. There are lots of various little things, nuances around the topic. And so the best advice would be go and research it further. Look into it for yourself and develop your own moral code for yourself. That's all I can suggest, because it is down to you. If it is to be, it's up to me. So you develop your own moral code and don't rely on others to sort of guide you on what you need to do on that thing. But do research and learn what you can from various different scriptures, books, whether it's Hinduism, non-Hinduism, but develop your own moral code. With that, I'd like to say thank you all for joining us today. It's always lovely to see the regular viewers, but today we had a number of new viewers as well. And I'd just like to welcome them all and say, please do keep on tuning in regularly every week. I want to share a couple of resources before we close. If you will just bear with me, I will share my screen. And this is for those who may not be aware of the various resources we offer. So if you are new to Hinduism or would like to simply just explore more about the basics of Hinduism, we do offer a really good course. It's free to attend. We have got over 8,000 students on the course, and I would highly recommend you start off with this. That may help you answering some of the common questions you may have about the topic of Hinduism. We also have our website, which is hindu-academy.com. Over here, you can ask your questions if you wish to in advance by. Hello, everybody. This is Nishit Kotak from Hindu Academy. And we will get your question by video. You can also sign up for the course over here. You can also download our ebooks, and more information is available on this website. We also have our YouTube channel, which is growing nicely. Recently, as you all know, we celebrated crossing 100,000 subscribers. We are trundling along nicely. We are at 106,000 subscribers, thanks to all of you who support us by sharing the channel and the videos. And this is a great place to go to if you have any questions, because we are very soon crossing another milestone. We will be crossing 4,000 videos on the channel very, very soon. And finally, we've got our Twitter channel, which normally a lot of people don't know about, but I can tell you that, for example, in the last 30 days, we had over 360,000 impressions to our tweets. Over 57,000 people visited our Twitter page. And, it's been growing very nicely. So if you're somebody who's on Twitter, please do give us a follow. It's at Hindu Academy. We do post different content on Twitter than what you see here as well. So it's a nice way for you to get some other information than our normal channels. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again to the team. I wish you all a great week ahead. Bye-bye for now, and we will see you next week. Same time, 2 o'clock. Set your alarms. Bye.